Good morning. We are gathered here this morning to worship God and honor Him. So let's do so by opening our Bibles. If you want to go ahead of me and go to Matthew chapter 6, we'll begin there in just a moment. The eyes are a window to the soul. You've heard that phrase, I'm sure, before. That is not an inspired phrase, but it does lead in to what Jesus is discussing in chapter 6 of Matthew and verse 22, when he says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So then, if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. What your eye allows into your body will be what exists there. What we bring in, that light, will direct our life. It will direct our whole body. Now think for a moment, if you had to lose one of your senses, there's not really a good choice, right? But think about losing your vision for just a moment. You wouldn't be able to recover it. And I understand there are many blind people who live great, fulfilled lives and accomplish a lot of things, but how much do you depend on that sense, that ability, every single day? Sight is a very biblical topic. It's mentioned in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. We will not examine every one of the passages that mention it this morning, but it's been said that eyes that look are common, but eyes that see are rare. Now, my eyes are seeing something right now. I observe things. But finding true meaning and true vision is different than sight. There's a common phrase we also hear called a snake in the grass. Now, why is that phrase common? Why does that make sense to us when someone says it? Well, have you ever seen a snake in the grass before? Once you have, you understand the saying, right? Because they are designed naturally to blend into that environment, aren't they? So you could be looking and seeing it, but not comprehending it, not having the vision to see it clearly. There are all kinds of, you go online, there's all kinds of little pictures and puzzles and things like that. Can you see such and such? And I have a natural fear of snakes, as many of you might as well. And somehow, can you find the snake in this picture shows up all the time for me for some reason. And it's kind of scary because most of the time, guess what? I can't find it. And that's terrifying, isn't it? Vision, the term, is used to being able to see the big picture, being able to see what will be next. We look at our leaders, our CEOs, our politicians. We want them to have vision for what will come and lead us to it. But we as humans can be lazy a lot of times when it comes to visions. We get into a routine and we see the same things or similar things a lot of times, and we let it fade into the mundane. Think about your drive here this morning. Great example. I was going over what I was going to say here, and in the class period in my head, I don't even remember driving here. Okay? I'm pretty sure I did. But how many of the unbelievably awesome creations that I drive past that I just completely blocked out because my vision wasn't there? We take those things for granted. We can see God around us in everything we do and everything that we see if we open our eyes and look for it. Look with me over in Psalm 119, verses 17 and 18. Psalm 119, 17 and 18 says, "Deal generously with your servant, that I might live and keep your word. Open my eyes, that I may behold wonderful things from your law." Seeing God in what we do and where we are is an irreplaceable benefit to us as followers of Him. Do we really keep our eyes open to see those benefits on a daily basis? Do we see Him in everything that we do or that we experience? Or do we allow the world to cloud our vision? Turn with me to 2 Kings chapter 6. We're going to talk about a passage that we don't talk about a tremendous amount, but it is a very powerful narrative that we want to start with, and we will kind of use as a springboard for our conversation this morning. 2 Kings 6, beginning in verse 8, "And now the king of Aram was warring against Israel, and he counseled with his servants, saying, In such and such place shall be my camp. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, saying, Beware that you do not pass this place, for the Arameans are coming down there. And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man God had told him. Thus he warned him, so that he guarded himself there more than once or twice. Now the heart of the king of Aram was enraged over this thing. And he called to his servants and said, Will you tell me which of us is for the king of Israel? One of his servants said, No, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. So he said, Go and see where he is, that I may send and take him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. He sent horses and chariot and a great army there, and he came by night and surrounded the city. Now when the attendant of the man of God had risen early and gone out, behold, an army of horses and chariots was circling the city. And his servant said to him, Alas, my master, what shall we do? So he answered, Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Then Elisha prayed and said, O Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Put yourself on that mountain with Elisha and his servant. That is unbelievable, isn't it? Now let's get the backstory for this here. The king of Aram, and Aram's not a very well-known kingdom of the Old Testament, but he was a very powerful political and military leader in this region at the time. And we can tell that from a couple of different things. Number one, historians have some stuff, but look how easily he dispersed a fairly large contingent of army military types to go after one person. Think about the reputation that Elisha has built for himself, that men in another country knew of him and his abilities that God had given him. Now, the king has put this plan in place that he's going to assert himself at this one particular choke point or rally point, if you will. And he's told his inner circle, right? But it doesn't work out when his scouts go out there because the king of Israel has sent men there. Their plan is now foiled. Now, the only way someone would have known that they were going to be coming there is if one of the king's men had leaked this, right? We have this same problem today. We hear about leaks from the military or top secret information going out, right? Who does he turn to immediately when he finds out that this doesn't work out the way he wanted to? He looks at his men, he says, which one of you guys is for the other side? Because the only way they'd know that is if it came from this room. And then one of the people said, oh, you forget, they have Elisha. And he tells them what you say in your bedroom when nobody else is there. So the king immediately says, well, I want this guy over here. So he can't help them anymore, right? Now, we're not told exactly how many men he sent. It said, it kind of uses some vague language there, but in 2 Kings, I want you to think about the servant and his reaction. I think it's the same reaction that any logical, intelligent human would have. It's literally him and Elisha. Not an army with them, but these guys coming at him look pretty serious, don't they? It says horses, chariots, and a substantial army, enough to surround the city. We know enough from archaeologists that Dothan, the city where Elijah and the servant were, was home to about approximately 1,200 people and covered about 25 acres of land. Now, if you took a perimeter around that, that makes up almost a mile. And it says that there were enough men to completely surround the city. So using some very rough math, at the snap of a finger, the king of Aram sent 3,500 to 3,600 men to bring back one man. Did he fear Elisha and what he was capable of? You ever had 3,500 or 3,600 people looking for you? Let me back that up. Have you ever had 3,500 or 3,600 armed individuals looking for you? How intimidating would that be? Could you hear yourself doing the same things that the servant did in verse 15? This is hopeless, my master. What will we do? It's not a wonder or a question of how did the servant have these reactions. It looked as if there was no escape. These armed, well-trained military individuals were everywhere he could see, and they were looking for him. Because that's what his eyes showed him. Now Elisha, his reaction was different than the servant's. Why? Because he possessed vision. He received God's messages and followed through with those messages, delivered those messages. He had a reputation of this. And look at the comforting statement he makes in verse 16. Do not be afraid, for those that are with us are greater than those who are with them. Now just that statement alone, do you think that the servant was like, okay, yeah, no problem, we got this? No. But what happened next was very simple, okay? And I think we have a very common analogy we can use with this. We do this all the time. Kids, they think if I am not staring at them, that I don't know what they did, or that no one knows what they did, right? And we tell them all the time, right? Who knows? God knows, right? That's not a kid's tale. That's not a fairy tale. God is there all the time. We don't say that just to try to make kids mind their manners or behave the way they're supposed to. He's here right now if we choose to see him. I'm not advocating like drug-induced hallucinations to see funny things on the wall or anything of that nature. I'm talking about opening our eyes truly and understanding and seeing God around us. But Elisha's vision that he possessed, verse 17, he just says, Lord, open his eyes so that he may see. He wants the servant to be able to see what he sees. And when God provides for the servant what Elisha had requested, I want you to think about what that would have felt like to be standing in his shoes. The range of emotion that takes place from being petrified, knowing that you've got all these individuals that are looking to either capture or kill you, or worse, to seeing those chariots and horses of fire surrounding you for your protection. See, Elisha wasn't worried because his eyes were open to see God around him. You see, modern day, we're not going to see physical chariots of fire surrounding us when we face a situation. It's not the way it works. But God has promised protection to be around us. Think about 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 13. No temptation has overtaken you except something common. And God is faithful, so He will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will provide the way of escape so that you'll be able to endure it. How can He do that if He's not there? We know from Scripture God is not slack concerning His promises, right? What are we told right there in 1 Corinthians 10? He will provide the way. But what we have to do when a way is provided is we have to see it. And we have to take it. You see, the servant didn't see God's provision immediately. He was solely focused on the threat, the problem that existed at that point. Have we ever fallen into that, where we focus solely on the problem and we forget everything else that surrounds it? By doing that, we overlook many times that way of escape that God has provided for us. I find it interesting that many times in Scripture, going back all the way into the Old Testament, and Joshua comes to mind especially, when he's about to be given instruction on something. Do you remember the phrase that's used? Do not be afraid. We have the same charge of not being afraid, because when we allow fear to be there, it gives us limited vision and we do not see God in us and around us. Can I explain exactly how God is around us in all of us? Yes, by His nature, He is all things. He is everywhere. Can I scientifically explain that to you and break it down as to how? Nope, I cannot. That's what faith allows us to accept. So that's where the world would tell you that that's a fairy tale. It's a children's bedtime story to make them feel better about the monsters under their bed, right? I can't see Him physically, but what I can see is what He's accomplished and provided for me. That is the fruit of God's presence. I can't see it. The world will tell you it's not there. I can't see the wind either, can I? But can I see the effects of the wind being around me? Absolutely. You see, true faith opens our eyes, but we have to keep up the work and maintain that faith every day. We have to keep our eyes open, looking for God's provision and not allowing our human nature or the influences that may be around us to make us solely focus on the problems, the threats that we face, but to see God. We can't see a lot of times the end from the beginning. We can't see all the details of God's plan as we're living it. But that doesn't mean that He isn't there and that He isn't holding us in His hand at every particular moment. Go with me to Psalm 139. Psalm 139, we'll pick up in verse 8. 139, 8, and we'll read down through 14. If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me and your right hand will lay hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness will overwhelm me and the light around me will be night. Even the darkness is not dark to you, and the night is as bright as the day. Darkness and light are alike to you. For you formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. God is everywhere, all the time. Do we live our lives with that focus about God and His protection? Or do we focus more on the problem? You see, the servant panicked because he didn't see God. We fail this sometimes too. What if it's a health crisis we're in the midst of? What's the first question we tend to ask? Why? Why, God? We search for understanding. What if we lose a loved one? Economic uncertainties. There's all kinds of trials we face in life. And we ask ourselves, why am I being put through this? And if you get yourselves in that situation, I ask you to pick up the book of Job and read it. Because that's not a new feeling. We often will react just like that servant did in fear because we only focus on what we see, those problems, what's right in front of our face at that particular moment. We forget God's promises. And God's plan doesn't always play out on our schedule. I mean, think about His promises to Abraham. I mean, when He made that promise to Abraham to make him a great nation, give him the land. I mean, they held on to that promise for generations upon generations, even through slavery, 400 years of slavery, right? I mean, God does things on His timetable, not on ours. And I ask you this. Scripture gives us an answer to this question. How many hours does it add to your life by worrying about these things we have no control over? Let us eliminate fear and worry from our lives by opening our eyes and seeing that God is everywhere. The key to our clarity in seeing God is prayer. God answered Elisha's prayer immediately. When Elisha was faced with this situation, he prayed that the heavenly forces were immediately revealed to this servant. We have to see this as an example of prayer and communication, that Elisha was in constant communication with God. Now, notice what we're not told in this passage. We're not told that Elisha knelt down and created this big to-do with a long, well-crafted, eloquent prayer, right? As we would say, we sometimes do. He simply said, Lord, open his eyes that he may see. And that, without telling us, it tells us some stuff. Is that the first time you think he's ever done anything like that? Or do you think that was his regular practice of being in communication with God? Because I think it's difficult sometimes for us to place that. Remember, Elisha's standing right next to the guy who's petrified. Could he have allowed that servant who's losing his mind to affect him? Elisha had the rock to fall back on, and he knew that. He spoke to the Lord because it was his habit. When he was faced with adversity, he went to God first. Thousands of soldiers looking at him, looking for him. Where'd he go first? Sword, spear, shield? He went to prayer. He went to talk to God. Being a follower of God means falling into his arms at every turn, whether that turn brings us the good things that we ask for or want, or the things that we've prayed to avoid. Prayer must be a really large part of our lives, and it does give us the comfort and peace. We must, like Elisha here, be willing to petition God not only for ourselves but for others as well. We must pray that others have their eyes opened, that they see God, his handiwork. Again, nothing eloquent, because this is the same God that made you. He already knows what's in your heart. He doesn't need a production from you. He just wants your humility and your submission. That's it. He doesn't need fancy speeches. He's not impressed with those things. That's what we need to be pleasing with God in our relationship with him. We need honesty, humility, and reverence. You see, we know and we understand earthly relationships are based on communication in both directions, right? God is speaking to us constantly through his word if we will listen. But how close are we if we do not communicate back to him? Because he's not going anywhere. We're the ones that depart from him if there is any separation. How close would your earthly relationships be if you spoke to people the same amount of time that you speak with God in prayer or study? Would you count him as a close confidant and friend? Would it be like the person you pass in the hall at work and you give them a head nod because you can't remember their name? Something for us to think about. See, faith sees beyond the physical. We speak about a lot of times about praying and looking for those answers that God gives us, but let's think about the ones that aren't answered in the way that we prefer. Elisha's confidence came from spiritual insight. He knew and understood that God's presence was around him at that particular point, even if it was invisible to everyone else. We have to trust that God is working, even when we don't see the results on our timetable. We have to trust in those unanswered prayers. Jesus prayed in the garden that the cup be, if possible, let this cup pass from me. He was praying that if there's another way, please help me to avoid what I'm about to bear. He knew that's why he was there. He understood that he must endure this on my behalf and your behalf. But he prayed that if possible it could pass, and the Father did not give him an alternative plan. That was an unanswered prayer. But he ultimately went through that torture and death on our behalf, and look what it provided for us. Paul prayed multiple occasions to have the thorn in his flesh removed. I have no idea what the thorn in the flesh is. We could speculate afterwards, that's fine. But think about this. We're not told a reason. God did not grant it. But Paul was given the ability to heal people, cast out demons, raise people from the dead. But he couldn't remove his own thorn in the flesh because God said no. No idea why, but one day maybe we'll find out. The why really doesn't matter though, just that God had other plans for Paul. Maybe he used that thorn for a multitude of reasons, humility, whatever. But it remained with him. How many times have we as faithful Christians prayed earnestly for someone's illness or disease, for a family member or a loved one, to be healed from a sickness or a disease? We don't get the answer we want. That can either send us in a direction away from God if we don't react properly. Can it? I mean, one of the stages of grief is that where people blame God for all the things that go wrong. Or do we choose to see that God's plan will play out the way it's supposed to, what He wants for us? It may not be what we want for us, but it's what God needs from us. And it's tough when it's physical, right? We watch people that we love suffer and deteriorate from illness or disease. And that's when our faith is tested, isn't it? You see, we have to find God at the bottom of the pit and know that He's put us there for a reason. Think about Joseph. His brothers hated him. Threw him in this pit. He's down in the bottom of a pit. Probably can hear them plotting his death right above him. Put yourself down in that pit with him. Are you finding anything good at that particular moment? Are you thinking, you know what? I'm sure this is part of God's plan. Or are you just encompassed with the fear? But God used Joseph from that dark place, not only there, but then another dark place in prison for quite some time, to ultimately saving God's people, allowing them to multiply greatly. We have to have faith that what God is putting in front of us, whether it be what we're asking for or what we're not asking for, is what is in His will and leading us where we want to be. It may be that our example is something that someone else needs that leads someone to Him because they see how we react to these struggles. Our thorn, if you will, could be an encouragement to someone else. Our thorn may keep us humble, but know that it's for God's purpose. We will be comforted. Ultimately, we're promised if we fulfill His will here on this life, how much of that stuff exists with Him? How much pain? How much sickness? We have to have our eyes open to see what God is doing for us. Because God is active. He is a living God. He calls Himself the I am. Not the I was, not the I will be, but the I am. Okay? Let that sink in for a second. He is and always will be with us. He's present. He's powerful. You are not alone, no matter what you are going through. What you see on the surface is not all there is to see. Now behind me you see a picture of well, maybe you can see it. It's a little faded with the lights in here, but there's an iceberg behind me. Scientists tell us that 90% of an iceberg is not visible to us on the surface. Only 10% of this massive force is visible to the naked eye. But how does that relate to us? Remember, our eyes can only see a portion of what God is doing. We need to roll up our sleeves. We need to open our eyes and realize that we serve an awesome God who's done amazing things for us. He's going to continue to bless us through this life and the next if we faithfully follow Him. This temporary life, it's hard to think that way sometimes, isn't it? On the timeline of creation to eternity, or even before creation, really. Think about the little dot that is my life or your life. How much of that really, it's a small speck. We as humans will never likely fully comprehend the glory and awesomeness of God. But know this, He saw fit to create us. He saw fit to provide a way to have a relationship with Him and a way for us to spend eternity with Him. This temporary life, however long or impermanent it may seem to us at this particular moment, it's nothing in the eyes of God. Keep our focus on His power, His providence, and the opportunity that He gives us to serve Him. This morning, our message hasn't really been designed around first principles of obeying the gospel. But there may be those here this morning who have never had the opportunity or felt the need to do so before. I hope that you've seen, through what we've examined over the last few minutes, an absolutely amazing God that loves you and wants to take care of you. And that doesn't mean here, but that means in the life after this one as well. If you've never obeyed the gospel, we ask you to come forward as we do that. Please just let your needs be known. We'd be more than happy to help you with that. As James has the songs ready to go, all things are ready. Please come forward if you have need.